Yay! Hi, my name is Risa M, and I'm an alcoholic. Am I okay? Can you? Is this okay? Okay. All right. My sobriety date is March 3rd, 2004. And my home group is the PPG Webster meeting. We meet online on Sundays on Zoom at 9:30 in the morning. I am going to be at my home group tomorrow morning from the hotel room upstairs. And it's a really cool meeting. It's a big book meeting. We go through the big book line by line. We study it. It's a little different from other meetings. Now, a lot of the meetings, experience is the lifeblood of Alcoholics Anonymous. I truly believe that with my heart. Our meeting is a little different in that we actually we study the book. We don't talk about our experience so much in this meeting because we are trying to become better practitioners, students, and teachers of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the directions that it entails. So we do that by studying this book line by line and reading what were our founders trying to say, why they're saying it now, and it's a really cool meeting. It's really cool. It's been my home group now for 4 years and 11 months. We are going to be having our anniversary meeting on June 1st, our 5-year anniversary meeting, It's truly amazing to see all the people that I've met through there on Zoom. It's really cool. We have friends from all over the world, all over the United States on there, coming and joining us for this thing, and we make it fun. It's really geeky. We're all a bunch of geeks, I used to be a big book thumper. I used to be like, the big book is the only way to be sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And through this study, I've actually learned a lot more about love and tolerance and open-mindedness towards the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous isn't a monopoly. And that we are to be open and tolerant if there are people out there who are looking for other ways to stay sober. And I've realized that a lot of my mindset around what the big book is was totally wrong. I was living it the wrong way. I was practicing it the wrong way. And so that's, it sounds like it's this hardcore thing, but really in honesty, studying the book this way has helped me to become a lot more able to wear Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, more like a loose gown than it was this straight jacket that I used to have on. My husband is already smiling at me because I'm sure I said something the way that it was sort of supposed to be said, and that's my big thing. He'll I just never get sayings right, and I've just kind of now just leaned into it. I am never going to get the right saying the right way, but usually most people know what I'm trying to say. So let's hope I keep that up. It's funny. I got sober during the convention at Rochester. 21 years ago, I was the FCFC in Rochester, and when I went back out, that was the first place people told me to go was to the FCFC and to get into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And here I am at this convention, and there's so many things that bring me back. I'm thinking about that first year that I went to the FCFC convention, I had absolutely no problems staying awake. Like, I couldn't sleep. I was maybe about 2 days sober. I had not learned how to sleep yet. I would be awake for days at a time. I was a complete insomniac, and like staying up till like just 11:30 at night would be nothing. Like, that was, I mean, even if you ask my family, even about 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't go to bed until at least 2 a.m. You know, like 11:30 was like my 6 p.m. You know, I was, and for some reason, the last few years, you know, 8:30 hits. I'm starting to get drowsy. Ryan and I are starting to argue who has to put the kids to sleep because one of us wants to go to bed before them. Both of us want to go to bed before them. So when, you know, Kate asked me to come and be the late night speaker, I don't know what possessed me to say yes. But I'm actually, I've gotten that maybe third wind at this point, to get up here and to be able to share my experience and my experience and knowledge. And, I've been talking to a lot of people over this week, and I've been hearing a lot of things, and like, it's just so much like has happened through my sobriety, and so many like weird things that like have happened through sobriety. And I was telling people some of the weird things that I got in my head. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous broken, absolutely, utterly broken. And here's the thing is, I feel like I was born broken. You know, I was born broken. When I woke up, you know, like my earliest memories are when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, and I wanted the green crayon, and some other kid had the green crayon, and I didn't know how to ask and say, I want the green crayon. And so I sit there and I'd color with every other color, but all I wanted was the green crayon, and I just didn't feel like I was good enough to even ask to borrow the green crayon. And that might sound like something trivial or weird to somebody else who is not in this room tonight, but I know there are people in here who are nodding along going, yeah, I get that. I understand that. You know, I remember feeling different from the earliest age. You know, my earliest memories feel like, and not only just around like school friends, but even in my own family, around my own flesh and blood, around my cousins, around my aunts, my mom, my dad. I just felt different. I didn't feel like I fit in. You know, as I've gotten sober, I've realized that like the feelings I thought I felt like were not even not fitting in, but just I was a mistake. You know, I was a mistake of a human, that like I got dropped or plopped on this world by accident, and I shouldn't have been here, you know, and like somebody in the heavens or whatever, you know, and just made a mistake. And so that was how I grew up. I always felt different. I always felt, you know, like I didn't fit in. And what happened was I didn't have many friends. I wasn't, you know, like I couldn't chameleon very good. I tried at certain times, like I was the girl who, like, in order for you to like me, I would pick up any dare, you know, like I was the kid who would take the dares, you know, and at early ages, I got in trouble in elementary school, this one girl had dared me to stand on the table in the library, you know, and we had library class back then, and you had to be very quiet in library class, and she dared me, we had just learned the Star Spangled Banner and music, and dared me to get up on top of the table and sing the Star Spangled Banner as loud as I could. And I was like, well, I just want her to be my friend. I want them to like me. You know, I didn't realize that the laughter that they were was laughing at me. I thought they were laughing with me, and I did that, and the next thing I knew is I was being dared to do that and dared to do this, and I did it all because I was so afraid of you not liking me, you know. And those feelings just continued to get worse and worse as the years went by. And eventually now, my mom doesn't drink. She just doesn't drink. I mean, like, my mom sat me down one day and taught me how to drink a Coke and pretend I was drunk so I could look cool at parties because that's how she got by. And my dad would drink a beer here and there, and both of my parents were divorced, but they just didn't drink around me. And so for the longest time, I thought I was an alcoholic because I didn't have anyone to teach me how to drink for real. And I would blame them for my alcoholism. Like, oh, if I just had somebody who drank more in my life and who had taught me how to be an alcoholic, like to drink, I wouldn't have become an alcoholic. But my mom did have a bottle of wine under the cabinet, for special occasions. And at 13, I remember I was in health class and we were watching this documentary or this movie on this woman who was an alcoholic. And we had watched part 1 that day in class. And, part 1, she was still going good. She hadn't hit her bottom yet, and I was like, I watched this woman and she was the life of the party. People were enjoying her. And I got in my head, oh, alcohol's good. Alcohol's good. So I went home and I sat down on the floor of my kitchen. And it was the 80s. I still remember it to this day. It was like that orange tiling, wood panel, kitchen. And I sat down on that floor and I got out that bottle of wine, and it had been open. It was a twist top Manischewitz blackberry wine. And it was twist topped, and there was some already gone because we used it for things for our religious holidays and stuff like that. And my mom didn't, she wasn't going to go buy another bottle of wine for the one time we opened it a year to pour it in a glass. So, I got it and I took a big swig of it. And I remember, I still to this day, like I can close my eyes and I can remember the feeling that happened. Like I can remember the sickeningly sweet taste of that wine on my tongue. I can feel the burning sensation of the alcohol going down my throat. I can feel my muscles just absolutely melting away, relaxing. I could feel all of a sudden I had a neck. Like my shoulders had been up around my ears for so long, being tense about who I was, that I didn't even realize I had a neck until the wine went into me. And I just remember this feeling of, and it was the first time ever that I felt like that. It took one sip, maybe it was a mouthful. And I remember thinking, I need more of this. However, at that time, I didn't drink alcoholically from the get-go. I was terrified of my mother. My mother had never touched me my whole entire life, still hasn't touched me my whole entire life. But she had a way of telling me and looking at me. We'd be out in public at a restaurant. I'd be acting up and she'd look at me dead in the eye and just be like, do you need me to take you to the bathroom? And I don't know what happened in the bathroom, but I wasn't about to find out. I was like, nope, I don't need to go to the bathroom at all with you. And so she ruled with fear. And I was terrified of my mother, and it was just her and I. And this is, if anyone, blackberry Manischewitz wine is this dark purple color. And if I continued to drink it and I put water in it, it would be noticeable that I had drank it. So I was like, all right, cap it on. The book talks about that. Some of us start off right away, hard drinkers, right from the get-go. Some of us start off as moderate drinkers, But at some point, we lose control of our drinking when we put it in our body. We cross a line. And that line, I still had a line when I first put alcohol into my system that day when I was 13 years old, Now, when I went back out into the world, I thought about that though. I thought about that sip. I thought about that drink. I thought about the relaxation. I felt the final comfort in my own skin, my body. And, our big book says that, we love the effect produced by alcoholism or by alcohol. Actually, it says we like it. I've changed it to love in my head. But, I loved the effect produced by alcohol. What alcohol allowed me to do that very first day and every single time later was be okay in my humanness. And I talked to my sponsees today, and I talked to other people that, when I go through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and I look at the 12 steps of AA, there's nowhere in this book that it talks about this is how we stop drinking. Nowhere. There is no magic key anywhere in this book that says, all right, this is how you do it. But what I found, though, recently, this is something that just, it keeps rolling in my head over and over, the last few months, is the 12 steps have produced an effect for me that allows me to be okay in my humanness. It allows me to be absolutely perfectly human with all my flaws, with all the failings I have, with all the feelings I have, with all of these discomforts and uncomfortabilities in many situations. These 12 steps have given me the ability to live completely and utterly comfortably in being human. That is the same effect that alcohol gave to me. After a while, I got a few more friends. They were the bunch who smoked and drank and did drugs and all of that stuff. I didn't fit in with anybody who, seemed to be doing good in life. I started to drink, I really didn't get drunk for the very first time until I was about 18 years old. So from the time I was 13 to the time I was 18, I would go home, I would take a swig off the wine. Sometimes there was cooking sherry under there. I don't know why, because my mom wasn't a cook. So I don't know why it was even there. But it was there, and I was like, you know what? And I would take it. It didn't taste as good as the Manischewitz, but it gave the same effect. And so, that was something, that constantly, was in my head, though. I would have a hard day, or I would feel uncomfortable, and I knew, sit down on the floor of the orange tiled floor and take a swig. When I had my first drunk, I was about 18 years old. My friend was going away. She was going to college early. And we were having a going away party for her. And, she was going early. I must have been 16 or 17 actually. And, my friend got a keg, and we went out. It was in Bergen. We went out to get, she got this keg, and I had never really been to a party. I still was uncomfortable around people, and I was real nervous. These two other girls who were with me, they were real excited. We're having a party, and I'm like, oh my God, there's going to be people, and what if they don't like me, and what if I'm not cute, and what if I'm not funny, and what if nobody likes me, and I was so nervous, and I was so worried, and I knew there was this keg, but I hadn't really put two and two together with the alcohol, and I felt comfortable. I knew that the wine made me feel comfortable, but it wasn't alcohol exactly. And what happened was I was so nervous, and we tapped that keg, and I went over and I filled up my plastic red cup, and I filled it all the way up, and I drank half of it down, and the same effect. Oh, it felt so good. And then the next thing that happened was this thing in my head started going, oh, you got to keep this going. If you stop drinking, they're going to know that you don't fit here, that you shouldn't be at this party. They're going to kick you out. They're going to know that you aren't funny. They're going to know that you're not cute. They're going to know that you don't belong here, and they're going to kick you out. And the next thing I know is, I don't know, I just keep going back to that tap, and I keep filling up that glass, and I keep drinking, and I'm just hanging out and having a fun time. And eventually there's a bunch of us, we just pass out, I think 3 o'clock in the morning, and about, 3:30 in the morning, I was waking with my stomach was gurgling. It was not comfortable. I was a puker from day one. I never stopped puking, unfortunately. I just kind of got used to it. I started to have like plans in place for the puking. That didn't slow me down much, but that first night was the first time where I started to throw up because of alcohol, and I ended up in the bathroom at my friend's house, and unbeknownst to me, her parents had come home sometime in the middle of the night, and I was on the floor, and I had stripped off all my clothes, and I was laying in my vomit because I don't make the toilet. I'm sorry, I'm a messy vomiter, and the door was open because everybody's passed out. And so I didn't even bother to close the door. And I heard a noise, and her father had walked by the bathroom, and he looked down at me laying in my own filth and in my own puke. And I remember the look he had on his eyes of just how disgusted he was in me. And I remember cleaning myself up, crawling back to my spot, falling asleep thinking, I'm never going to let anyone look at me that disgustedly again. I'm never going to drink to this point ever again in my whole entire life. I made a promise to myself that very first drunk, I'm never going to do that again. I woke up with a hangover, and I don't know if anybody knows this or not, but when you have a hangover and you have a headache and it hurts and you can't look at the lights, they tell you maybe just to drink a little bit. Sometimes gets rid of it. I didn't know at that time that I had an allergy to alcohol. I didn't know at that time that when I put a little alcohol in my body is going to scream for more. And so I drank some alcohol. I picked up somebody had told me to do that. I picked up a red cup. I drank down some of what was in the red cup. And as we were cleaning up that party, I continued to take and pick up what was in the red cups. And drink that down. I think I might have drank a cigarette butt down at one point too. But what happened is I became just as drunk. I became just as drunk that very next day as I was that night before. The promise that I had made to myself was out the window. I didn't know it at the time, but I was suffering from what the book calls an allergy. It was a manifestation that happens in my body, that when I put alcohol in my body, I lose all control of my liquor consumption. I wanted a little bit so I could no longer have a hangover. I made a promise, a vow to myself I was never going to get that sick again on alcohol. And that just gone. It was gone the next day. I never made that promise to myself again until I was much later into my drinking. Oh, so let's fast forward a little bit. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because there was a man who ended up in my life and he had a problem. I didn't have the problem. I was drinking all the time. I was throwing up. I actually had a few boyfriends who left me because they were tired of cleaning up the pukey, drunken girl. But I didn't have any problems. He had a problem. He stole money from me, and I said, I had found out about Alcoholics Anonymous through some things that had happened in my life, and I said, I know what you need. You need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, at the same time, not only was I still a puking mess and people have left me because of that, but I had also lost some jobs. I had also been in and out of the hospital with alcoholic seizures. I could no longer go outside into public, regardless if I was drunk, sober, or high, because the effect produced by alcohol was no longer really working for me anymore. I was absolutely terrified of you. I was to a point where I wanted to die, but I was too afraid to kill myself. So what I would do very often was get very drunk and drive around crazily in the middle of the city of Rochester, New York, hoping to tick somebody off enough that they would shoot me in my head. That was what my life looked like. But he stole money from me. He had a bigger problem than me. We went to Alcoholics Anonymous. It was Valentine's Day 2001. Happy Valentine's Day to us. We ended up in Bill and Bob's in Rochester, New York at 10 p.m. And we were sitting there. And I was going half in and out of, reality as we were sitting there. But what I did hear is I heard people talking for the first time about how I felt on the inside. And there was this moment that the speaker earlier today after the banquet talked about grace. And there was this moment of grace that I had, that a thought came over me for one moment that said, maybe you should be here too. I didn't know if I was an alcoholic. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I preferred to be a drug addict because that seemed cooler, or at least crazy, because then you could get a pill for that, right? I didn't know what was wrong with me, but what I did hear was people talking about not feeling like they fit in, feeling like they were wrong, feeling those feelings that I had felt my whole entire life that I currently was feeling in that meeting right there and then. And I was just like, maybe I should be here too. And I wish to tell you that boyfriend I had got sober, but he did not. But I continued to go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they told me, get a sponsor. And so I got a sponsor. I didn't know what a sponsor was. I didn't really know what a sponsor was supposed to do, but I got one. And that woman took me, she had me come to her house, and she sat down with me, and she said, if you're not an alcoholic, don't waste my time. And the problem with that is I didn't know what an alcoholic was. I was sitting there 21 years old. I was sitting in rooms with people who were homeless, who had lost their jobs, who had lost their families, who had lost their children, who had lost, had gone to prison, who had been homeless. None of that had happened to me. And if I had listened in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, the best that I could at that time, all I knew about alcoholism was that you had really bad consequences that I hadn't had. So I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I didn't know if I was an alcoholic, but I didn't want to waste this lady's time. So I didn't show up again. I did steal her 12 and 12. I don't know if I stole it. She let me take it home with me, and then I was afraid to ever talk to her again, and I have made amends for it, and she was just very happy that I had gotten sober. And it's still my 12 and 12 today. But I got another sponsor, and that sponsor told me, you got to get rid of the boyfriend. And I was like, no, that's not happening. And she said, well, then I can't work with you. And I got another sponsor, and this kept going. I got another sponsor, and she said, you know what? Just stay sober for a year, then we'll work step one. And that happened. And for some reason, I just couldn't make it to a year. I couldn't make it to a year. At 11 months sober, I ended up picking up again. Now, I went to meetings late. I left early. I hated you. I got in fights with people. People would talk about the higher power thing. I was not about that at all. I would throw chairs at Bill and Bob's. I would throw coffee at people. I would yell at people. I would scream at them. I would fight with you outside the meeting. I would fight with you inside the meeting. There are people who are still in AA today who remember these things happening, and it keeps me humble. But I really, really didn't want the solution of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't want to have this thing. And I still didn't know what alcoholism was. At 11 months sober, I picked up. And again, it was in March. It was March 2nd, 2004. And I picked up very briefly. And again, I was graced with this thought that came through my head of, you don't want to go back to that life. Because I remember I don't remember my consequences all the time, but I did remember at that very moment that life was like Groundhog Day, just over and over and over again. Wake up, try not to drink, that day. Like, and this is during my active drinking. Try not to drink that day. Something would tick me off within an hour. Start kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to get something into my system before the day is over, and like not show up for the rest of my life. I didn't know if it was, June or January. I didn't know if it was 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. Like, it was just like every day was this cycle of wake up, be miserable, try not to do this drinking thing, try not to do these other things, and just keep moving. And I never was successful. And so when I picked up on that day, there was this moment of just like, you don't want to go back to that. And I went to a meeting in my pajamas, and I showed up at High Nooners, and I went to High Nooners, and I was like, this is what's going on. And they said, get over to the convention. And I went to the convention. It was the first time I listened to anybody. And I went to the convention, and I showed up there, and I went to the registration desk, and I said, this is what's going on. They told me to come here. They said, great, get behind the registration desk, start selling tickets. I said, all right. And so I did that, and two things happened at that convention. First thing happened was there was this really crotchety old lady, and she told me, girls like you don't get sober. Wow. That kept me going for a while. I was like, I'm going to show her. And then the second thing was while I was that angry, I picked up a few other friends who were just as angry with me. And there was this woman there, and she didn't seem as angry anymore. And I was like, yo, like, what's going on? Like, you're not angry anymore. And she's like, I started working with a woman. She took me through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and took me through the steps. And I was like, all right. Like, we used to make fun of those people. Like, okay, sure. And I went through the rest of the convention, and just like here, conviviality, fellowship, excitement. It was around me. It was addicting. It was amazing. It was in the air. There was this special feeling in the air. And I made it through that convention thinking, oh, this is amazing. I can do this. I can be sober. And then I ended up at home on Sunday night with my 2 cats by myself, alone with my thoughts. And the dread and the misery and the just wanting to die came over me, and I hated myself, and I hated my life, and I hated everything that I was and everything that I had become. But I stuck it through, I was like, all right, like, I'm sober now, like, we're doing this. And a few days later on a Wednesday, I went to a meeting, and what happened was that same woman, my friend, who was angry but wasn't angry anymore because she found a sponsor, was there. And now I was absolutely miserable, but she was still happy. Even though she wasn't surrounded by the excitement of the convention, she was still happy. I said, what happened? She said, I told you, I got a sponsor, and I worked the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous out of the big book. I said, can you do that for me? She said, sure I can, but you need to be at my house at 6:30 on Sundays. You're going to work with me at 6 o'clock. You're going to work with me from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. We're then going to drive over to this church at 7:30. That's going to be your home group. You're going to have that as your home group. We're going to do whatever service position we give you. You're going to get 30 numbers of 30 women, and you're going to call one of them every day. And if you don't do those things, I will not take you through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did everything that woman asked me to do. I was terrified of her. And slowly but surely, we went through the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and guess what? She taught me what alcoholism was. she took me through the doctor's opinion, and she talked to me, and she told me about that allergy. And I said, hold up. I have an allergy to penicillin. I get rash all over my body. You're not going to tell me I have it. That doesn't happen when I drink. And she said, what the book says is it's a manifestation, a phenomenon. Phenomenon at that time means something, it still does, something you can't explain. The doctor couldn't explain it. But the word allergy means something abnormal that happens to your body because of a substance. Well, she explained to me that not everybody has this thing happen to their body. Only about 10% of people do. And I started looking around at the people who drank. And there were people who drank and met their mark and put it down. And I was unable to do that. And when I was able to see that, and I was able to see, I went out to drink only one or two a lot of times. I went out to drink a few times, and I was going to go to work. I was going to go out to drink. That first drunk, I went to just get rid of a headache. And I couldn't control my drinking. And I was able to see that. And so then they say, just put the plug in the jug, right? If alcohol is my problem, don't put it in your body. But then she explains the other part of alcoholism. That I have a mind that just keeps popping that plug right out of the jug. I can't not put it in my body. I am compelled eventually to put it in my body. There are two reasons for this. One, either I don't care, or two, I've deluded myself that it's going to be different this time. And that's what we call the mental obsession. And she went through the book and she explained this to me. And when I matched my own experience up to what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was telling me, and she takes me to this page on page 44. If I can find it. She takes me to this page on 44 and she says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, so I have no choice, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, which means when I want to have one or two, I end up having a lot more, you are probably alcoholic. And she asked me those questions, and I could answer correctly for alcoholism. And at that point, I knew I was an alcoholic. I also knew that being alcoholic was a big problem because I had two problems now. When I drank and when I don't drink. That's it. I have a problem when I drink, I can't stop, but when I don't drink, I can't manage life. You know, she then talks to me about the other part of step one, which says that my life had become unmanageable. And she talked to me about not being able to manage the decision whether I drank or not. When she taught me all of that, I felt absolutely hopeless. And when I work with women today, when I get to the bottom, the end of the first step with them, I don't want them feeling hope. I want them feeling as hopeless as they possibly can. I want them to have a true first step experience that they have nothing that is going to help them overcome alcoholism within themselves. Because at that point, when I am that truly hopeless, I am open to a new experience. And it's only through a new experience that I am willing to do the things that Alcoholics Anonymous asks me to do. I didn't like a higher power. I didn't like the idea of God. But when I realized how hopeless I was, my sponsor said to me, can you at least believe that if you work the 12 steps, you'll be in a better place? And I said, yes, I can do that. And so we went and we rocketed through those steps. I had sponsees by the time I had 7 months sober. So it's not about getting a year sober. It's about getting a power. Through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I got power outside of myself to not pick up a drink. I still don't have a choice whether I pick up a drink today or not. But I have a choice on if I am going to work the spiritual steps of Alcoholics Anonymous on a daily basis to keep me connected to a power greater than myself that gives me the power to not pick up a drink today. This is all wonderful and good, and I knew what the solution was. And what happened after that is I started using the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as an educational knowledge type thing. I didn't live this thing, but I knew it. And I started to be this I know the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've got this memorized. I could tell you things. I could tell you how you were doing it wrong. I could thunk you over the head with it. I could make you feel horrible. I've gone into meetings where they have literally been like, shoot, she's here. They hated to see me coming. And what happened was I started to get very, very lonely because nobody wanted what I had. I was an angry person, and I still wasn't practicing the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was only doing the 12th step in the part that I would try and give it to you, but I didn't practice the principles that are outlined in this book. And 10 and 11 were just extra credit, right? Come on. We all go to those meetings and half of us don't even know if 10 is what time of day we're doing it. 11 is that's when things really build up, and I do that once a year, maybe once every 3 years with my sponsor when I've really gotten myself into a low again. That's 10 and 11, right? So those weren't even on the chopping block. And 12 I was only doing half of, and that was pretty much my sobriety until I had about until I had 16 years sober, was that. And what happened was it started around 9 years sober when I had my daughter, and things just the way I did AA had to change and stuff like that. But what happened was I just slowly stopped having any relationship with a higher power. The only relationship I had was my knowledge of Alcoholics Anonymous and the book. That was it. I didn't have a power greater than myself any longer. On page 164, it says, sorry. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. And what I was trying to do was pass along a message that I didn't have anymore. And not only did I not practice this thing, but at 16 years sober, I realized that I no longer believed myself to be powerless over alcohol. I thought that the amount of time, the knowledge I had of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and just my name alone was going to keep me sober. My pride alone was going to keep me sober. And all I was worried about was how I was presenting myself to the people in AA rooms. And when I would go into meetings, I would sound all great, and I would talk about God and all of this stuff, but I was leading a double life. I was leaving rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous absolutely devastated in who I was, wanting to puke at how much of a fake and a phony I had become. At 16 years sober, COVID happened. All right, got time, good. COVID happened. And what happened was I was living to go to meetings alone. That was my sobriety, was meeting sobriety. And meetings are amazing. I'm not going to say meetings aren't. Meetings are amazing. It's where we get to be around the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's where I can find people to be of service to. It's where I can find the fellowship I crave. It's where I can find my people. But the only thing I was doing was going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and trying to sound good and put on a reputation that wasn't really mine to have. And on my anniversary, the world closed down. And I was home with my kids in a life that I hated, that I wanted to give up. I wanted to run away to California or something, live on a beach and drink whiskey all day, every day. That was my life at 16 years sober. And what happened was I got shut in with this family that God had given me, and I was miserable. And I remember, being alone in my room one day, and I was on a meeting, I was on a Zoom meeting, and it was just everybody was complaining about COVID and Zoom and everything like that. And I remember getting off, and I was in my room, and I was thinking, if God is supposed to help me stay sober and I'm supposed to have this relationship with God, I'm screwed. And I remember driving around. I would get angry and I would just get in my car and I'd listen to music really loud and drive around the city. And I remember I'd end up in front of a bar, and I wanted to go into the bar so bad. And again, at a certain point, there's going to be a time where the only thing that stands between me and a drink is my higher power. And grace came through one more time for me. And I didn't get out of the car and go into that bar. And I didn't pick up the bottle of hand sanitizer that I desperately wanted to drink down. And I went home. And I went to bed because I didn't know what else to do. And my husband was on a meeting on Zoom, and he comes racing upstairs with the Zoom meeting, and there's this woman talking, and she is talking about exactly how I was feeling. She had double-digit years of sobriety, wanting to drink again, hating life. And she found the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous again without picking up. And I really, truly believe the only way I was ever going to find that spiritual place I had found once before was by picking up a drink. And here was a woman who never had to pick up that drink, and she was excited. She wasn't only excited about being sober, but she was excited about AA. She was excited about the big book. She was excited about God. She was excited. And so I started going to her home group. And her home group was a big book meeting, and they studied the big book line by line. And I sat in that meeting for the first time, and me, who had gone through the book and had had hundreds of sponsees who had gone through the book, and I could memorize everything that was in this book, they were talking about a different book. And I realized at that moment that maybe, just maybe, if they're reading the same thing that I'm reading and they're getting something different from that, maybe, just maybe, I don't know everything there is to know about Alcoholics Anonymous and the big book of AA. And so I started going, and my mind and my heart and my soul started to open to the idea that maybe I just didn't know it all. I got a sponsor through that group, and that woman took me through the steps again. And I had an experience unlike any I had ever had before. Today, my life is, there's been some changes. There have been some changes, but I still have the same house, the same family, the same pretty much everything that I had when COVID started. And everything that I have is a true blessing. I look at my children and I am so grateful that, not even just grateful, but they delight me. You know, I get excited to watch them. I get excited to listen to them. Sometimes I'm a little tired and I don't want to hear, about the 80th time my son has, watched this anime video. But I love how excited he gets about life today. Where it used to be 5 years ago when he would talk to me like that, I would want to go to my room and shut him out. My daughter is amazing. She and I have built a relationship today. We are close. She trusts me. She told me on Mother's Day, she's like, I love Daddy a lot, but you're the one who I can go to know that I can calm down. You can calm me down. You are she looks at me as the rock in her storm. I have an amazing relationship with a husband that I was ready to divorce 5 years ago and sometimes question it when things go bad at Starbucks. That's another story. But I'm absolutely in love with my husband today, and he's I didn't think we were going to be able to make it through those days. I have been able to go back to school at 40 years old, which I didn't think was ever a possibility, to go and do what I absolutely love to do. I get to be a role model today, not only of knowing the knowledge that is in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I now try on a daily basis to actually practice the principles of love and tolerance and open-mindedness that this big book has offered me and taught me. Today I realize that the ways that I stay sober might not be for everybody. And that is okay. It's not up to me to point fingers at you, to judge you. If you are staying sober and you are happy, who am I to tell you you're wrong? But if you're in this room today and you're miserable in your sobriety and you think that maybe, just maybe, you don't know it all and you have an open mind to try something new, come talk to me. Because maybe the solution that's worked for me might work for you too. Thanks.